Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Jewish Professionals Podcast, the JP Podcast. I'm Hillel Bainach.
And I'm Benjamin Winters, and we're students at Yeshiva University, just looking for some advice.
Our aim is to bring to you Jewish professionals from every industry to learn from their successes and failures, how they grew in their career and Jewish identity, and made a Kiddush Hashem along the way.
We hope you can apply what you learned through the lessons to your own life as they pass the torch to us, the next generation. We can't wait to go along this journey with you. This is the Jewish Professionals Podcast.
Woo! Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the JPP, the Jewish Professionals Podcast. It's an exciting time. Post-Purim, we got March Madness on the horizon, Ben.
It's great. March is amazing. You see these crazy buzzer beater shots. Last night, there was a wild game. Just straight from March Madness's playbook, a game winner, 1 second left. It was a 16 seed, so we'll see where they end up going. But
it's crazy because these teams really work the whole year. And, you know, our guest is a former D1 athlete today, as we'll introduce shortly. But they work so hard the whole year, and their season ends on one shot.
One shot with like 1 second left. And I love how in March Madness, there's a perfect pan of like the people who are celebrating. And then you have like the next camera shot 2 seconds later, your emotions just like crying.
They're on the floor crying.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But today we are joined with a very special guest, Adam Yohanan, a lawyer / entrepreneur, turned entrepreneur, I'd say. He has a remarkable journey in the legal world. He began his career as a Wall Street attorney after he went to Georgetown Law and just opened up his new practice. Adam, welcome to the podcast. Pleasure
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Hillel. And Hillel, congratulations to the YU basketball team. I saw some of the highlights from the conference tournament, and it was great to see what you just described with, you know, some sections celebrating, the others not celebrating.
Right.
And that was just beautiful to watch the whole journey. And I know so many people in the Jewish world and beyond were so excited about that. And people just love the YU basketball team. And I heard a story recently from Ryan Terrell. That's his name.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Ryan
And he
Terrell.
said that KD actually reached out to him and was like, "I love like your game. I love how you're like inspiring your people."
Oh, yeah?
So people are taking notice.
Yeah. Well, I'm not quite Ryan Terrell in height or in stats, but listen, yeah, he's an inspiration to us all. But you tell us about you were on D1 track in Tulane.
Yes, I was a track runner. Wasn't really that good. I probably should have been D3, but I really wanted to go to Tulane.
You could claim D1 athlete.
I'll claim it. I ended up quitting my sophomore year, but track really did a lot for me because of the discipline that's required. Like, you know, you guys practice at 6 a.m. We were the same, waking up at 6 a.m.
Which race were you running? Like,
I was
what
middle distance, so
Okay.
800 meters, 1,500 meters.
I did that in high school.
At a different speed.
Yeah, way different speed. Probably in the worst league in Maryland, but wow.
Make that D6. Yeah, you can go D6. Well, why you was a D3 track team? It could have been in a different life. You never know.
Maybe I should have done that. So, you know, I grew up here in New York City. I was in the public school athletic league, and I was the public school champion in the mile, which actually wasn't that hard to do because most of the fast kids are upstate because that's where the forests are and the facilities are. And, you know, kids here, they're good at sprinting, you know, because it's a big Caribbean population, but there's not that many distance runners here. But track gave me everything I needed for law. And once I was done running, I shifted everything to law and I applied the same work ethic. So I think the athlete, you know, path is a great way to start. Even if you're not going anywhere with it, the lessons learned will serve you for a long time.
Right. Ambition, hard work, grit.
Well, let's go back there, actually. So where did you grow up? Where did you go to high school? And along that journey, kind of.
So I grew up on the west side, and I went to the Bronx High School of Science, which is a massive public school up in the Bronx. And I always went to public school, and I grew up sort of around the Spanish and Portuguese Jewish community on the Upper West Side, even though I'm not that. But
there's a big Spanish Chabad there. Now we call it the Spanish. I think it's like half Spanish, half French. A lot of people from that origin. Should check it out.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't even that. Like when I say Spanish and Portuguese, I'm not referring to like Hispanic, like Cuban Jews. I'm talking like the people, the first Jews in America.
Oh, wow.
Like
interesting.
Like the people who left Spain and Portugal in the Inquisition, and then they went to Amsterdam And as you know, the Dutch founded Manhattan.
Right.
So there were, of course, some Jews were along for the ride.
These are the OGs.
These are the OG American Jews. When I say American, I'm referring to the whole 2 continents.
Wow.
So that's who founded my shul. The Spanish and Portuguese shul was the first American Jews in 1654, something like that. And Justice Cardozo of Cardozo Law School was on the board at this shul. And, you know, there's a great legacy there, a lot of great lawyers there over the years. So that was the environment I grew up in, but I wasn't in like day schools or anything. I was just kind of like learning there with Rabbi Chaim Angel, who I believe is on the faculty here. And that was how I grew up. And I would just go to the public school, and then I would, you know, be back in the community and, you know, other times. And then I just went off to college. And I think as I grew up, I didn't have the same kind of connection that, you know, a lot of people do in like the suburbs or in like Ramaz or anything like that. But I had a strong seed inside of me. And I think one thing that I'll get into later in this podcast is when you're really finding who you are and connecting with who you are, you need a little bit of free time, right? You know, in Judaism, the idea of like meditation and just reflecting is a huge part of our development. We have to do that to figure out where we're going in life. And one way that the modern world tries to sap that out of us is by overworking us,
right,
and giving us 0 minutes in the day to just go for a walk and reflect. But if many of us, we could find the right path if we just thought about it a little bit.
Right.
So that's kind of, that was my journey through, you know, public school and then athletics and then being a workaholic in big law. And eventually I quit and started my own firm.
Why did you go to Tulane?
I wanted to be away from New York and away from the cold. And at the time, it wasn't really that much of a Jewish school. It was still a Jewish school, but nowadays, you know, I talk to kids who go to like Ramaz and stuff, and they're like, Tulane's my top choice. I have to go to Tulane. And I was like, really? Like, are you sure that that's such a good idea for you? And I was down there this winter for a whole month, and I was at the local like liquor store, and the amount of like arak and like other like kosher wine, I was like, what is this place? And they're doing, you know, Shabbat dinners at the Chabad house, like 200 plus people almost every week.
That's
so
amazing.
Tulane is a great place to go if you're a Jew. And I didn't realize that because I went over 10 years ago and it was kind of a good place. But now it's becoming like there's a lot of observant kids who go there.
Right.
And it's just a great education. So I'm a big fan of Tulane.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so you're in Tulane. You're on the track team for a year. Maybe talk through your progression, deciding to then go to law school. And I know you grew up around the people in your community, but talk about that.
Yeah, so I think for a lot of people who are business school students, they're thinking to themselves, like, I want to be in business, right, of some kind. But maybe you're not so good at math. You know, like nowadays to be good in business, you have to be really good with the algorithms are a big deal. Like sales and trading used to be like Wolf of Wall Street. You're making phone calls. Now it's algorithmic. To be an investment banker, it's a lot of crunching the formulas. So you have to be a numbers guy to make it in Wall Street for sure. And I just wasn't, but I wanted to be a business person. I didn't want to be like, you know, a public defender or something. And so I figured I could be a business lawyer. That's my route. I was an economics major, and I was like, let me just go to a top law school. And that what I realized at the time was to make it in law, and this is so important. If you want to be a business lawyer, you probably need to start your career at one of the big law firms, meaning like it's defined as, quote, big law, which means one of the top 100 or 200 by size. And that's the only place where people do transactional law as opposed to litigation. Litigation means you go to court, you argue. There's all kinds of litigation, immigration, personal injury, XYZ. If you want to go into that, you don't need big law. You can learn how to do that just walking here in Washington Heights. I passed a few storefront lawyers. I'm sure they do good work. You could work there.
I don't know about that.
Maybe not, but
They're pretty busy. There's a lot of personal injuries. So.
A little sketchy.
yes. But transactional work, they don't hire people out of law school to work transactional anywhere other than big law. So, you know, in-house counsel, that's a transactional position, but it's not available to people right out of law school. you have to first work in big law, then you become the in-house counsel who works at Verizon and does Verizon's contracts, or like the people who are in-house counsel at Nomura, however you say that, they already worked in big law. So that's an important path. And so what I realized when I was at Tulane was I have a good enough GPA to get into the kind of school that will allow me to get into big law, and therefore I should just take advantage of that. And so what people need to realize about the law school process, it's not like college and MBA where they look at your personality and it's holistic. That's like kind of a lie that people say. It's all about the GPA and the LSAT. And they don't really weight the context of your GPA. So you could be an engineering student with a 3.8. That's probably like the smartest person ever. But or you could be an English major with a 3.9. They'll actually potentially prefer the 3.9 English major because it's all a statistical thing. So that's the first thing people need to know about the law path. You need to get into a top school, most likely, in order to go to big law. And I'll explain like why that is. But in order to get into that top school, you need the GPA and or the LSAT. So that's like step one, which I had the GPA. And so I figured, okay, I just need the LSAT and I'm basically good. So I was able to get in early to Georgetown and just went straight there. Now, the second step is getting into big law. This can be done in one of two ways. One, you go to a top 14 school. The 14 number is not like literal necessarily, like maybe there's 16 or 17 schools, but you basically need to be at one of the top ones. And then you do decently well the first year, like top 50% or so, and you'll be into big law by the end of the first summer. And during that first summer, you'll book the gig for the second summer, which always leads to the full-time job.
Right, the return. I got it.
Yeah, that's the simple way. The other way is you go to like Cardozo or Brooklyn Law, or sort of like Fordham's kind of in the middle, but you go to Cardozo, you need to be in the top 10%. You need to be like what's called on the law review, which is like an elite status, basically. So a lot of people will be faced with a decision. Do I go to Cardozo with a full scholarship? Do I go to Brooklyn Law with a full scholarship? Or do I pay up to go to NYU or Fordham, where I can be in the top, say, 60, 70% of kids at NYU or Columbia will get an opportunity at big law, 25% at Fordham will get the opportunity, and 10% at Cardozo. So it's a lot of pressure to perform in the classroom when you're at a school that only is going to let 10% in. It can actually get more ruthless, which is weird. You think like, oh, a lower ranked school more ruthless than the higher ranked, but that's how it is because it's not lax. So that's the law path. Mm-hmm. And so I took the easiest path, easy liberal arts major, got straight into Georgetown, got enough B pluses, did the interviews, and now I'm in.
Right.
I always wondered what big law meant. So it's off size. It's based off size, basically.
Well, I think most people's, at least my first exposure to big law was Harvey Specter.
Yes.
Was Mike Ross, was Suits. I know there's another show. But how much is big law actually like that?
It's pretty close to that.
Like you have to have the slick back hair. You gotta.
Louis Litt didn't have the slick back hair.
One thing that's outdated about the show is the in-person thing.
Okay.
It's hard for me to really say what the vibe was back in the day. I think it was like that. I started a year before COVID, so I had like 6 months of in the office, and I wasn't really paying attention to all these cultural things. But yeah, it's like there's a hierarchy in the firms that people need to understand. And this is how a big law firm functions. And when I say big law firm, I'm not talking about Morgan & Morgan. Like that's the largest personal injury firm in America. That's not big law. Mm-hmm. Big law means big business law. You serve the businesses. So doing like M&A transactions, big business against business litigation, that kind of thing. So the hierarchy is at the top, you have the people who bring the business. We call those the rainmakers. So they call all the shots. They're the most difficult to deal with.
I'm already shivering. That name, the Rainmakers.
The Rainmakers.
How do you earn that title? I mean,
you have a book of business. You go out and you schmooze the investment bankers.
Right.
And then the investment banker says, I'll give my work to your firm. And now the firm has 10 lawyers or more serving that investment bank, and they're billing a fortune all because of you for bringing them in. You may have done nothing except go golfing.
That's very interesting because to get into law school, it's all about your grades and your GPA and your LSAT. And now it's all about who has the personality. The tables kind of change.
The tables completely change. So if you're the personality type, you think you could be a rainmaker, you know a lot of people, you like to go to the golf course and schmooze, you just need to do enough to get in the door. Just get in, and then if you're not the best lawyer, that's okay. The smarter people are there for that reason. So you bring them in, and then the smart people do the work, and then that's pretty much the system. And then there's like a third category, the people who are good managers who sort of like run the admin of the firm. But basically it's those two categories, the really good lawyers and the personality types. And the pay discrepancy is wild. So at some law firms, the rainmakers are making over $20 million a year, like at Kirkland and Ellis, which is the biggest.
Right.
Yohanan Law too.
I wish. So
one day soon.
Soon. But yeah, so they're making 20 million, 10 million. And then you have partners who are making 1 million.
Right.
Still pretty good, but you're working all the time. And when you calculate the hourly rate for the hours you're putting in, it's actually not that good. You know, it sounds crazy, but if you're an associate, you're only making like $250. You're like, now you think like, what, $250, Adam? Like, how could you say that someone making $250 isn't like on top of the world? Well, if you have no life and no bandwidth to meditate on your life and think about things, what kind of a life is that? What are you really going to do with the 250? And, you know, you end up losing a lot of it to all kinds of like doctors. You know, you didn't even, there's back doctors, there's mental health doctors, there's, you know, you lose a lot of money to these sorts of
the fees that come with the trade.
Really, you should be investing your money in your golf swing so that you could eventually get in there and just be the rainmaker.
It's a common theme on the podcast now.
Yeah, that's kind of it. So you need the clients, or else they can throw you out at any time because there's always going to be another smart person to come in. Right. So that's true of all law firms. So even at a small law firm like mine, like people need to bring the business. Got it.
Yeah. Before we just get into big law and what your experience was like working there, the Journal just put out an article on how this past year was the hardest round to get into law schools. The most applications they've seen in a while. They said due to a bunch of people worried about AI replacing other jobs, even though I know there's been some talk about AI replacing some extent of law. But what's your reaction to that? And why do you think people are all of a sudden becoming interested in this type of career path?
It's hard to say. When I was going into law school, it was around the first Trump administration when he was first like in, and then the next year there was a big Trump bump, and which is just a lot of people who go in thinking like they're gonna like save the world or something. And that's a lot of the law school population, and me kind of too. Like I wasn't like totally in the business law thing. Like I was like, maybe I could be like a save the world type. You know, most lawyers, even business lawyers, have a little bit of that in them, and then they just abandon it for practicalities, and they become like whatever they need to become. So that's usually what drives people. Now, the people who think it's like going to be a good deal for them in a increasingly tough labor market, I'm not so sure, because the AI stuff in law, it's coming for the lower level lawyers. So like at these big law firms in an M&A deal, a lot of hours are put in by the lower level lawyers doing things that I used to do that I always felt like I shouldn't be doing this. Like this should be taking less time if we had
repetitive.
Yeah, like stuff that's ripe for AI replacement. And they didn't bother to make me more efficient because I was billing $800 an hour. So, and I was getting paid like $100 an hour or less. So it's a good deal for them, but eventually they're going to have to implement AI. And so I don't know how many entry-level jobs there are going to be, but it's hard to say. AI may create more jobs, but law is really competitive because there's no barrier to entry. And I think that's probably the main thing that's driving it. Like to go into banking, you have to have some kind of a grit to you. Like, you have to be willing to do a lot of schmoozing at the interviews. It's not just like a simple process. Obviously STEM is STEM. Not everyone can go to medical school. Even something like sales, not everyone's cut out for sales like that. There's a big barrier to entry there too. So, and same with entrepreneurship, like straight out of college, that's not easy. So I think law is easy entry for a lot of people. So I think that's what's always, now I didn't realize it was the toughest year. So, that's too bad, but I guess a lot of people still want to be lawyers.
Yeah. I mean, shifting back though to the reputation of big law, you're coming in as a young Georgetown graduate. Did you come in with a plan of how you're going to manage your time? How are you going to deal with those demanding hours?
No, because I never had a real job before other than working at like the Nike store. So I was...
You worked at a Nike store?
Yeah. So I was what they call KJD, K through JD. You never had a real job. And the people who've had real jobs are much better big law associates than I was. Because they're just more mature. Like I was like 25 years old with all this responsibility, never had a real job. I wasn't good at managing the time. So I didn't know what to expect. Like in law school, the second 2 years are easy. There's 3 years. The first year's really hard. And the second 2 years, if you get a job the first summer, you can just coast.
Right.
So I was doing whatever. I was just hanging out in DC. And so I didn't have a plan at all. But I think what you need to expect is during the business hours, it's a lot of like communicating. You're on calls, you're asking questions, responding to emails. It's like putting out fires. Like it's not what we would call like quiet, what do they call it? Like deep thinking work or like deep analysis work.
Right.
Where
It was busy work. It's
busy work. Yeah. It might not be like stupid work. It could be very important. Like you could be talking to a client, but it's not quiet individual work. But part of being a lawyer is the quiet individual work, which must be done at nights and on weekends. So that's the first thing you need to understand. The second thing about the time management is there's not a set amount of work that needs to be done in the week that you can predict. If that were the case, the sheer number of hours wouldn't be that bad. You could just do it when is appropriate, and it wouldn't be too many hours compared to other industries. The problem is it could be 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. You have plans for dinner at 7:38, and at 6:30 you find out you need to cancel those plans and you're going to be working all night. And that's a light situation. Some people find out at 8 or 9 p.m. that they're going to be working all night. Like so you have to be ready to not make plans, which kind of sucks. So
I remember somebody told me once that it was a point of pride in their office when they worked at Big Law that people would sleep in the office overnight. Is that true?
Have like the dinners come in, like you order up.
Definitely the dinners, but they would bring in the pillows too.
that's crazy. The pillows. Some places have showers. I don't think
That's
mine
wild.
had a shower. But if they don't have a shower, all these office buildings have a gym or several gyms right up below them. So there's a lot of like at 6 p.m. I'll go to the gym and then go back and finish up work all night. If you stay to 9 or later, you can order food for free and you can get your cab home. So if you know you're going to be there till like 10 or 11, you can order food at like 6 and then you'll get to take your cab. But with virtual, who knows where these firms are at now. Virtual helps a little bit. But there's not much you can do about the time management in transactional law. In litigation, it's a bit better because of the way cases work. You're at the whim of the court, which has a judge who works 9 to 5, and so that's a little bit more normal. But in deal work, you're a deal lawyer.
You're on the clock.
You're on the clock. The investment bankers work all the time, and they have the same issue. So they're going to push off that onto the lawyer. So the investment bankers might say like, oh, we're done doing whatever we're doing at like 7. Let's dump it on the lawyers at 7:30. Oh, and by the way, we're going to be working all night anyway, so we need the work product by like midnight.
It's like, let's have a competition between the investment bankers
Who can sleep
and the
yeah,
young
who can sleep less?
associates. who can work themselves harder.
Yeah, I still think the investment bankers work harder.
Right.
But like they're higher on the totem pole.
Right.
And it's like with the money thing, the investment bankers make less the first few years, and then at some point it like flips. And like so if you're a lawyer, by the time you get to year like 6, 7, you might be making like close to like $500,000, maybe like 400,000. Again, it sounds good, but you have to do the division. But the investment bankers, by the time they get to like, you're around the same age, like age 28, 29, 30, like they could be making 700 a year. But again, the division,
Right.
Interesting. So you had an interest in this kind of corporate M&A, corporate finance, whatever it is. What did you find actually very interesting once you started working?
The value of working in big law is that the deals are large and complex. So if you're doing a merger between two massive companies or an acquisition by a huge private equity firm of some huge software company, there's a lot going on in that business that you get to learn about. And as the junior person, you're in the weeds, just like the bankers are, learning all the details of the business and then learning all the details of the contract itself. So we could have a 150-page document and you get to understand what every single part of that does and why. If you started at a small firm like mine, we might do an M&A deal that's only like 35-page document. So there's still a lot to know, but it's not the same level of complexity. And that's what allows big law and big banking alumni to be ready for anything. That's the first thing. Number 2, the standards that are set are very high. So there's a high floor for how bad a person can be. There's not that many bad people who survive for more than a few years in these places. So it's a certain credential that can be relied upon by future employers and that you can enjoy having in your skill set because you learn the right way to do things. And that's not to say that at small firms and small banks, there aren't even better people. There might be, but it's not everyone. And so there's a generic standard of how things are done. So you get the big deal complexity, learning from these amazing examples, A, and then B, the standards of how work is supposed to be done and working with people who are the best in the business and sitting on the conference call with them and they're explaining to you exactly what's happening. And so what you do to get the most out of that is you observe and you take note. You may not get to apply what you're learning because you're not going to be in charge of the deal, but you're saying, I like this partner the way they do things. I'm going to like copy that into my repertoire. Like in basketball, like I like this, the way this guy plays, I'm going to do it the way he does it.
Picking mentors, kind of.
You pick mentors and they don't even have to be your mentor for you to observe them. So they might not be giving you any tips. It's okay. They don't have to give you tips. You just observe. And that's enough. They'll also give you tips because the mentorship is quite good, but you mostly observe and you might disagree. You might say like, look, that's a fine way of doing it. I might do it a little bit differently. I might combine partner A's style with partner B's style, and that might be my style. So that's what you get in those first few years in the big companies. You develop your way of doing it.
Right.
One of my favorite quotes, actually, before we move into the story, is that the world is your library. I think Kobe Bryant once said in an interview, the world, this is kind of what you're saying, just looking at people, mismatching whatever kind of skill sets you find valuable, and then applying it to your life.
Right. Adding it to your own bag and making it unique and throwing your own touch on it. Before we get into what you do now, could you tell us maybe some of the myths or maybe things that people don't know about big law from their experience or from them watching Suits that they think is so indicative of the industry as a whole that through your experience could either not be true or something that doesn't get a lot of attention that is true?
My one issue with Suits is that it's very litigation centric. That's a problem with entertainment and law. They always portray the litigators. It's like, it's so annoying. If it was real life, there wouldn't be a law firm like that where the most powerful partners are all litigators. The most powerful partners are usually the deal lawyers. Like at Kirkland and Ellis, the litigators are there, but they're not in charge. They're not making $20 million. It's the M&A lawyers who make $20 million. So people need to understand that the litigation might be more glamorous or respectable. That's not who's at the top of the totem pole.
That's not the
Big Law.
Rainmaker.
It wouldn't make the best shows, like zooming in on them working on contracts at 4 a.m.
That's true.
Exactly. So that's a huge misconception. Another thing, like with suits, it's like sometimes it like looks very like glamorous in a way, like almost like more glamorous than it really is. Like, you know, like everything's so fancy. Like it's kind of fancy, but like it's actually pretty like rugged.
Interesting.
Yeah, but honestly, it gets a lot right. Like there's the people like Louis Litt who are like, I guess he's supposed to be like the smart guy. Like he's actually the best lawyer, but like look what that gets him, because he's not going to be a rainmaker because he doesn't have that like golf personality.
Exactly.
Or the looks. But before you started your own firm, you moved over to Milbank for 2 years.
Yeah, so I was 2 years at Willkie, Willkie's one of the best middle market private equity firms. So they represent like Insight, lots of big middle market private equity. Milbank represents banks. So as you know, the way leverage buyouts work, and that's like how the way M&A works, is the private equity firm buys a company and they pay for it 80 or 90% with debt. So there's three players. There's the lender who provides the debt, 80 or 90%. There's the private equity firm who puts up the 10 or 20% of other cash and takes all the equity, all the ownership. And then there's the seller, the company selling. And that's exactly how real estate works, right? Like you buy an apartment, buyer, seller, bank. So Milbank, no pun intended, is one of the leading firms to represent lenders. So I switched from like borrower private equity representation to representing banks and lenders. And I recommend that before you leave Big Law, do one lateral, try out another firm just to see if for sure you're not cut out for it. Maybe it's just the firm. Probably not, though. If you're not doing great at the first firm, probably you're not cut out for it. So Milbank was a little bit better in some ways. And I realized, I was like, okay, good. This firm is much better for like whatever quality of life and like other organizational things, but I'm still miserable. So clearly I'm not cut out for this.
All right. So you're making your way along and all of a sudden an idea pops into your head. Yohanan Law.
Yes. So I knew I had to do that. But before I went out on my own, there was a 2 or 3 month stint where I tried something else that didn't work for me either. I was actually in-house counsel at this Israeli bank called Discount Bank, IDB. You may know there's Leumi, there's Hapoalim, and then there's the third one that's green. Like if you go to Israel, you'll see like they're on the streets. It's the green logo.
Okay.
It's called Discount.
Discount Bank.
Classic Israeli to use an American word and mispronounce it.
No. It's just a coincidence that that's the word. It's just some Greek Jew who founded it back in the day.
It's not a play on discount.
It's not a play on discount. But yes, I was there for 2 or 3 months, and being an in-house counsel is amazing and terrible at the same time, depending on your personality. So what's amazing about it is you get almost the same salary and you work 9 to 5. So I was in heaven because I had the bandwidth and I was like really finding myself and like growing as a person a ton without taking a financial hit. So I was like in paradise. But if you have that like killer instinct and you want to be like a winner, there's no winners in the legal department of any company, because at a law firm, you can be a rainmaker. Even if you're an associate, you're making money for the firm. So you are like, you're on the court, so to speak. Like there's an excitement to that. You're what's deciding if the firm succeeds or not. Being an in-house counsel at a company that makes money not by providing legal services, it's kind of lame. Nobody really respects you. People view you as being annoying, as a person who says no to things, as a person who holds things up. Classic example is like the salesperson in a company. They're the superstar, right? At a software company, salespeople are the superstars. They make money for the firm. Salespeople are product people. And the lawyers, what do? They get in their way. It's like, why are you getting in the way of the superstar? Like, let them cook, you know? And so that, if you don't care about that and you're just like, oh, I'm just chill. Like I have my family. Like I'm getting like 200, 300K to work 9 to 5. I don't care if I'm not respected here. Like I don't need to be a superstar like in my job. Then that's a great path. And that's why people go to big law. They get the in-house job. I couldn't take it. And at one point I was like, I need some business cards because I'm schmoozing with all kinds of like rich Jews right now. Like I need some business cards. Like I'm going to be a rainmaker at this bank. Like, and they were like, Adam, you can't be a rainmaker at the bank. You're in the legal department. And I was like, well, but why not? Like, who cares? Like, I'll just, and so, yeah, there was too much cultural clashing there. And I just couldn't do good work. I just wasn't motivated or in it. And that's when I learned, I didn't have it in me to just be like a basic in-house counsel. So I said, you know what? I'm going out on my own. I'm just going to quit. And if this doesn't work out, then I'll just leave law altogether. And at that point, it was all in Hashem's hands. And I said, I'm going to do everything that I can do with my 0 clients, and we'll see what happens.
That is incredible. The killer instinct. I connect with that a lot.
That's a massive leap of faith, I guess, leaving behind the trajectory, going out on your own.
And the salary. I mean, now you're making $0 a year almost, just starting from square one. What was that like?
It was very painful at first because I was living in a very nice apartment that I had started living in Big Law, but I couldn't really enjoy it because I was working all the time. And now I'm still in this nice apartment, but now I'm enjoying it. I had an outdoor pool. It was incredible. And I had to move out within like a month. I was out and I was back with my parents living on the West Side.
Wow.
Very humbling. And most people, when they say very humbling, that they mean it like in a good way, like something good just happened.
Right.
I was humbled in a bad way, like in a way I didn't want to be humbled. And I was there for like over 2 years and waking up every day, no clients. I'm like, how can you be a lawyer with no clients? It's like a fisherman who doesn't catch fish. Like you're just a guy with a rod.
Right.
And so I had to really like reorient who I was, but a lot of good came out of it. And, it was around the time, it was right after Yom Kippur, and it must have been like the first, week of the Torah cycle. And I look at the first word, Bereshit, in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? I'm Bereshit right now. Like, so who knows where this is going to go? Like, everything started from nothing.
And you didn't expect the Dvar Torah coming out here.
Yeah, that's my interpretation of Bereshit. I was like, wow. I'm Bereshit right now. Like, and I started, doing a lot more. Like I started, going to Minyan in the morning, and I started like learning, and I kind of realized how awesome it was. Like I'd finish the minyan, I'd be at the free breakfast, listening to the rabbi or whatever, and I'm like, I don't have anywhere to be. Like I'm chilling. And I realized there were a lot of Jews like that. Like a lot of people, I'm like, none of these people have real jobs. Like, there were a few people who had their medical scrubs. Those were the only people who like had to get going. And I realized in some way, I was like, this is a good thing because now my whole lifestyle has shifted. Whereas like, and I looked at the religious people in the big law, it's always a struggle for them, for the most part. They're up against a lot. Like, and
the cards are stacked against them.
The cards are stacked against them, and it's just a pain. Right. You have to get in at a certain time. You have to deal with Shabbat, Yom Tov. It's just hard. And I looked around, I'm like, all the people who are at the weekday minyan at this shul, they just don't have real jobs. I don't know what they do, but
or they're so big that they don't need to go to a job.
I still don't know what they do. So I assume they own real estate or something. But
so how many clients does Yohanan have now?
So now it's a lot. Like we've probably served over like 100. Wow. But in those first days, I would just go and I'm davening, just give me one.
Right.
So that at least I can check the box on my the bar admission form saying I'm still practicing. So that went on for weeks, 0 clients. Mm-hmm. And I just go home after and I just read my law textbook and write a few blog posts. And that was all I could do. Then I finally get the one client.
How did you get it?
Luck, just people, someone saw the blog post, someone who knew me already. And they were like, oh yeah, I'll hire Adam. Obviously they knew I was a lawyer already, But you can't become a rainmaker in big law unless your target clients are banks. So this is a big issue. You might be like a lawyer who went to YU and you're like, oh, I know tons of entrepreneurs from YU. I should be a rainmaker, right? Well, no, because you have to wait for those people to become managing director at the bank. Right? If you know 1 million associates or junior analysts at the bank, that's worth nothing. If you know 1 million YU entrepreneurs, they can't be clients of the big law firm. Mm-hmm. So many of the people who knew I was a lawyer already are now like, oh, now we can work with you. So that's where the first few came from. And yeah, I would just go every day and just think about, the few clients that I had. And I was like, if they become successful, I can bill them for more. And it just kind of went from there. And I kind of just kept that lifestyle going. And I'm still here today, just basically doing the same thing. Like, it's like today right now, it's like, the middle of the week. I hardly know what day of the week it is or, but I can just take off in the middle of the day. And that was the lifestyle I realized I had to have.
Right. Where's Yohanan Law right now? I know you kind of just touched on right now, but sort of take us through the journey from your first client to where you are right now, the types of clients that you serve.
So this is a journey that many freelancers will go through in client acquisition and client refinement. The first clients you get might not be the best clients. Some of the ones at the beginning I still have. Some of the clients at the beginning were terrible.
What makes a terrible client?
Fighting you over the fees and not taking your advice are the main things. So like, Adam, I know what I'm doing. And I'm like, no, you don't know what you're doing. Which is rough because the investment bankers take advice. The investment bankers actually respect the lawyers a lot because they are sophisticated themselves. So they know how deep the contracts are. They could do a lot of it. So like people who know more know how much they don't know. And people who don't, so that people who think know-it-alls and then of course cheap. And what you have to do over time is you have to slowly fire the bad clients and raise the standards, raise the prices, which is scary because you need someone. And there's a balance for like how early do you start raising these standards? Some people say best to just start off in a niche because niche businesses are better generally. But if you need to get off your feet and you're worried about like succeeding on day one, better to be a generalist because it's a wider pool. But if you're a generalist, you can't do as good of work and you can't charge as much. So I start off more generalist. Over time, niching down, raising the standards, saying no to more people, raising the prices. And now we have less clients at one time now. So I'm less busy, but they're higher paying clients and they're just more serious.
How many people work for you now?
Total, there's, including me, it's a team of 6. So it's me and 2 partners who are also US lawyers, and they each have a specialty. So it's important for lawyers and all professionals to specialize. That's a product of the times we're living in. We're living in the knowledge economy. Everyone's very smart and knowledgeable these days. You can't just be a generalist in something like law. So I have one partner. She just does or primarily does the corporate side of things, like corporate law. How are entities formed? How are they sold? How do investments work? Mm-hmm. Then I have another partner who focuses on commercial contracts, meaning like B2B, sales of goods, sales of services, IP licensing, different buckets. So they each lead the 2 big areas of the firm. And then in addition, I have 2 lawyers in Colombia, the country, who act as paralegals. And I started off, I had several US paralegals, kids just right out of college, and I was just blown away by the lack of quality.
Really?
And I was like, no, this isn't worth the price. And then someone said to me, and this lady, Miriam Ovadia, she was on my own podcast. She does staffing in Colombia. And she was like, Adam, let me get you some Colombian lawyers who worked at the largest Colombian law firms and have them just be your paralegals.
Well,
and I was like, yes, that's more what I'm thinking. So I've been doing that ever since. So that's number 4 and number 5. And then number 6 is a full-time marketing person in Colombia as well. So people need to understand, you run a small business, you also run a media company, most likely.
A lot of branding right now.
A lot. And that's most sectors are like that, no matter what you get into, whether it's like a tech startup or services business or consumer products. You have to be running a media company even if you're not qualified for that. So that's
we
why
should connect you with our PR guest.
Yeah, our previous guest, yeah.
That could be good.
Yeah, and I listened to his podcast, but that's advanced stuff. You know, like that's for mature businesses. These questions are easily solved. You have your PR person, you have your marketing person, everything is professional. That's not going to be an option for the average, YU startup. The average YU startup is going to need to, get a room like this, start filming a podcast,
right?
Make some funny videos.
Right.
You have to just figure it out. So
something I wanted to ask is about when you're hiring, especially you worked with some post-college students, maybe some students still in college. What are you looking for?
My views on this have evolved. I'm not a big interview person. I don't really like the idea of judging people based on how they interview. A lot of people these days are really smooth talkers. There's a lot of good talkers out there.
Right.
And at first I was razzle dazzled by that. And now I just put no weight on it. So I like resumes. I like people who have good grades. But I'm doubting that as well now because the grade inflation at so many of these schools, it doesn't mean anything. There's very few departments at most schools where I'm I actually trust the professors. It's you better be in Orgo or something. But at a law firm, most people, they're in the business school, they're in liberal arts. It's just so easy to game the system. Even good grades, don't get much. So I have to say I like people who have a personal connection to me because they're a little bit scared that I'm going to tell the personal connection or other people in the community that they suck. And there has to be accountability. So many people, they just don't care about what you think about them. I don't know what it is.
Right. And does that translate over to now when they're an employee, the fact that they're taking accountability, the fact that they're taking initiative, that's what you look for also?
Yes. You have to take ownership of the project. If you don't know the answer to something, that doesn't mean you just stop there. You are focused on the finish line. So you get a project done 95% and you can't go that last 5%, whatever it is, it's kind of worthless. So we need in the workplace, you have to be a finisher, someone who takes it all the way to the end. Here's a classic example of how this comes up, in entry-level jobs. So the junior associate at the bank or the law firm sends out an email or whatever, based on something project that was discussed with the senior person. Does the senior person need to write down on their to-do list or their item list, this project or workflow is in process and I need to follow up on that? No, they shouldn't have to even think about it. They should know the junior person is on top of it. That doesn't mean the junior person can do it themselves or knows all the answers. It just means the junior person will push it until they can't, and then they'll come to you and ask whatever questions they have. And they might be totally ignorant. So that's okay. Ignorance is often tolerated actually because people don't know everything. But what do you do with that ignorance? Do you just throw your hands up, or do you just if an email comes in and the junior person's copied on it and the senior person's copied on it, as the senior person, can I just move that into my email folder, or do I have to move that email to my to-do list folder and make sure that the junior person follows up on it? And that follow-up might just be forwarding it to the senior person. Hey, I don't know how to respond to this. What do you want me to say? So that's how you get ahead at the beginning when you don't have any skills, right?
Got it.
So as you get older, you have the skills, you can get away with not being so on the ball because people hire you for what you know, or they trust your judgment. They hire you for what you think. They just want to get your opinion. As a junior person, you don't know anything and no one cares about your opinion. So you're hired for what you can do. And what you can do is be organized.
That's great advice.
And ask if you don't know.
Yes.
Right.
Don't worry about the asking. Obviously, you don't want to ask too many stupid questions that like you should know the answer to. But yeah, better to just ask and show that you're on top of it within reason.
Right. Because if you sweep it under the rug at a certain point.
The sweeping under the rug, it's a big issue. And yeah, people need to be able to forward you something and just say like, please handle. And then they delete it and they don't have to think about it. And they know if there's something, they'll just come back.
For everyone listening, that's invaluable advice. Just having people have confidence in you through being always available, through always being accountable, and through kind of being creative in your approach also to get things done. But we have a big time question, but I think it's your day for it.
So just a little background. We have a question that we like to ask all our guests at the end of the podcast.
Big time question.
What across their industry applies to every other industry, specifically in what they're at right now? The background to why Hillel introduced it that way is it was the question that we came up together with, but Hillel took credit for it on our last podcast.
I don't know if that's exactly what happened.
I think that's exactly what happened, but whatever. This is the joint Jewish Professionals podcast, but whatever. Politics aside, on what the question is,
we might need to divest part of this.
We'll get to the answer. What is something that you've learned across the law industry, skills, experience that applies to everything, business, medical, tech?
You have to make people feel a certain way about dealing with you. And the way they have to feel is like comfortable, meaning like they know you're gonna handle it. And like I'll apply that like to some ways. Like if I drop off like my clothes at like a certain dry cleaner, like some places like I just know they're on top of it. And so how does that make me? I just feel like relaxed, you know? Or like in finance, you dump a project on a specific junior analyst. The senior person feels just relaxed. And that's what's going to drive their decision-making. Like who's going to get the big bonus, who's going to get laid off. It's not necessarily based on the objective criteria. It's like the feelings, but the feelings are driven by objective criteria, but it's like, you got to make people feel that you're in control. And this is huge in law because like clients are coming to us with sensitive things that are anxiety inducing and they're worried about. Even more so in the other practice areas, like things like imagine like immigration or criminal law, you're facing real consequences. But definitely in entrepreneurship law, people are freaking out or they just care a lot. So they need to feel like they're safe with me. I'm in control. Even if you don't know all the answers, make them feel like you do know all the answers or make them feel like you know where to get the right answer. So it doesn't have to be like a puffery kind of like fake confidence thing. It can be more like, I know that at this computer web designer, they might not know how to do every feature that I'm asking for, but I know they're the type of person who's gonna find out the answer or at least tell me they don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And that allows me to relax. And so ask yourself that question, and this is definitely true in services, but in products as well. Like if I buy like a certain product, like can I just relax knowing like this is probably good quality? Like I go to pick up food from a certain place. Can I just relax knowing like this isn't gonna make me sick? Or do I have to like wonder like, what's going on in the kitchen there? Like, so there's always a wondering, like, as we engage in commerce, like, what are we really getting here? Like, what kind of a track record does this institution or person have?
Awesome. And maybe some kind of final takeaways you have as a Jewish professional in the workplace for our audience and where Yohanan Law is going from here.
One thing that I've noticed as a Jewish professional is that maybe this is just law, but non-Jewish people love to work with Jewish people if they own it, you know? So you got to be really strong in it. There's a misconception among a lot of the Jewish world that people like Jews when they're conforming or whatever, assimilating or like, no, I'm not so like, don't
Right.
worry. Like, I'm not like that. Like, don't worry, I'm chill. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere, And I think one great example, there was a great interview with the Chabad rabbi from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I definitely recommend checking that out. I forget which podcast, so I don't want to like say it and be wrong, but he gave an hour-long talk about like how to make it in Saudi as a Jewish business person. And he's like, just ask for the kosher food, even if you're not kosher, like just demand it. And in the Arab culture, not only are they gonna respect that, they're gonna get excited for a couple reasons. One, they love to be hospitable. So they're gonna be like, oh yes, it's like, I'm gonna like do a good deal. I'm gonna get some points by like taking care of this Jew right now.
Right.
Just for their own selfish reasons. And then number two is like, they know a lot about Judaism. Like they know about like kosher and other things. Like,
Right.
So that's like an extreme example where it definitely works. Like in the Middle East, you have to own it. And that's one way to get respect. But even in cultures that like are not so like familiar with Jews, people don't realize like Jews have a better reputation than they think they do, So a lot of, especially in the professional world, like in professional services, like people want a Jewish lawyer and they want a Jewish accountant and they want a Jewish banker and they want a Jewish lots of other things.
Right.
Like have a good reputation. Even people who don't like Jews might feel that way.
And feel a need to contribute to that reputation, make a Kiddush Hashem.
Exactly. It's, yes, when they hire you and then you're doing good work as a Jew, it's huge. Like then,
Right. That's the representation of the Jewish community as a whole. And by being authentic and being proud of it, you sort of lead the line for all Jews to come and for us, the next generation that are going to hopefully enter the workforce full head of steam.
The next generation, I love that.
Yes. And that's what's going to help more Jews get hired places is if the existing Jews are doing good work.
Right.
Not that this is going to like be an official HR policy, but on a subconscious level, we want those unconscious biases working in our favor. Mm-hmm. And so it's a simple formula, like just do good work. And ground that good work in the Jewish values. Like this is something like, Purim related, like, Esther, Mordecai, they're saying, accept us as Jews, not because of like how Persian we are, but like, it's going to be a good deal for you because we are who we are. Like because of our qualities, that's going to work. Put our Jewish qualities to work for you.
Right.
And you're going to be in good shape. And we see that, throughout history, like the powerful world leaders over time who put the Jews in powerful places,
Right.
It goes well for them.
Wow. Okay. I think Yohanan Law should also look into opening a rabbinical sector of the practice.
Maybe a Far Torah social media page. I would tune in.
That was amazing. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Jewish Professionals Podcast for a great conversation with Adam. You can check him out at his own podcast. We really appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Thanks again for tuning in.
Yeah, and quick shout out to Jonathan Kogan for running the mic, Josh Ostroff, Ashley Botnick, and of course JB. See you on the next one.